It is great to see you here. And we're not going to think about those people who might be, let's just say, at the beach. Hey, by the way, I just checked the weather at the beach. It's not good. It's raining, kind of cold. So it's all good. It's great. It's kind of funny as I look out. We're lopsided over here. Like, this is normally our college crowd section. But I see we have a few non-college crowd over here hanging out. It's good. It's good to see you guys over here. Over here are the parents with young children who are nervous to death, and they need to be near this door, which is near the kids area. In this section is the 40 and up crowd who don't mind this, being right in front of me, because that's dangerous sometimes and prone to ask you questions and stuff. So anyway, just interesting. Just wanted you to know that how that works out. All right. Well, anyway, we're here. It's good in this series called Redeemed that we've been in for several weeks. Just talking about this whole issue of the redemption of the world in general, but the redemption that is taking place in our lives as well, and going back and looking through different places in Scripture and discovering how God does that redeeming process in and through us. And so we're going to talk about that again this morning, and I'll get there in just a minute. But thinking about folks who may be on spring break who are traveling right now, or some of you will travel this week, and maybe you'll go to places that you've never been, and you'll break out something. One of these guys, right? Your smartphone. And you will pull up that wonderful app, Google Maps, Apple Maps, whatever Maps, app. Wow, that's a lot to say. Maps, apps. Anyway, all those things that you use to get you from here to there. Now, let me ask you a question. Has your map program ever let you down? Like you dropped a pin somewhere, and that's not where you were supposed to go. Okay, well, I got two stories. Here we go. This past week, I was going to someone's house, and I had an address, and that's all I knew. I'd never been there before, so I dropped the address into mine. I was using Google Maps, into my Google Maps program. Drops a pin, shows me right where I'm supposed to go. I'm good to go. So I take off, get over there, stop at the pin, the house, park, and I start to walk up to the house. And I look in the driveway, and first of all, there's this utility truck with all this construction stuff in the back, and I'm like, I don't know of anybody in this family who would have a utility truck, but okay, whatever. And then I move along through the driveway, and in front of that is this little purple car. And it has a skull thing hanging from the mirror, and this is an older couple. So, and I look in there, and there's like, energy drink cans all over the floor and stuff, and I'm like, okay, well, we're just going to keep going with this. Who knows who that is? So I walk up, and then it just got really scary. I look down to the side of the walkway, and there's one of those little yard ornaments. And it's an elephant. It's a red elephant with an A on it. And just above it is this banner, and it says, Roll Tide. Have you heard of this? Do you know what I'm talking about? I was like, oh gosh, what is that? But for some reason, I was compelled to go on. And so I go up to the door, and I'm getting ready to knock, and I look back, utility truck, purple car, skull, Alabama elephant. This is not the right house. I am now sure that this is not the right house. So I get on the phone, I call. Sure enough, it's the same number, just one street over. So I'm like, okay, so I drive over there, and then when I see, I'm like, oh, I recognize that car, recognize I'm at the right place. That was great. Okay, so there's one. Second one. Anybody been to Farm Links up in Sylacauga? Played golf maybe? You know what I'm talking about? Okay, so I'd been there before. Somebody had taken me up there. I hadn't paid really good attention about how to get there. So this next time, I'm meeting my dad up at Farm Links. So I get the address, pop it in, drop the pin, good to go. Go up 280, turn off, and then begins this odyssey for me. I am driving, I don't know what county that's in, but I am all over the county. And I'm trying to get to the pin. And have you ever been getting lost, but you're not quite there yet? So you think you might have recognized that gas station before, is this a patch of trees? I don't remember that one. But anyway, you keep going and you keep going. Well, anyway, so finally, I get to the pin, and I look around, and I'm just in the middle of the road, and I pull off to the side. There is no golf course in sight. I mean, there's not even close to a golf course. It's woods and a mountain up this way, and a big valley down this way, and old gas station back that way, and I have no idea where I am. So I did what every good man does, and I did not ask for help. I looked at that map every way I possibly could. I tried to figure it out. I kept driving. I took a left here for the heck of it, then took a right there, and I became more lost than I was before. This thing just got ugly. So I did finally swallow my pride and call my dad, and it was like 10 miles away. But anyway, after 45 minutes, I finally got there. So here's the thing. I know that there is a distinct difference between getting lost and being lost, right? Getting lost is the process of lostness, where you kind of think you might still know what you're doing. The point at which that's over is called being lost, where you actually stop and go, I'm lost. That's it. I have no clue where I am. No, know where I'm going. Like there's that distinct difference, and it's funny when you drop that pin and you end up lost. You're like, that's not where I wanted to go. Now, I know that there are a lot of people in their life who have been on this journey, and it might kind of parallel what I was just talking about right there. Like maybe at some point you've been down this road where you sort of dropped a pin on that map of life and said, I want to go there. And somewhere along the way, there were red flags, and you know this is probably not the destination you should be going in life, and you know this is probably not what you should be shooting for. This is probably not where you should be going. And then you got there, and then you fully realized this was a bad place for me to go. Whatever that was, running away as a teenager, or some crazy wild hair you got and went off and did something, or a job, or started a business. I don't know what that could be for you, but you got to that place, and you realized this is not the right place. This is not what I thought it was going to be. And maybe even at that point, life begins to sort of crumble around you as you go, what have I done? Where am I, and how am I going to get out of here? And I have talked with many people who've been in that situation in life, and that's a very tough place to be. Well, if that's ever been you or somebody you know or somebody you love or maybe somebody sitting next to you, you're going to love this guy today. So if you have your Bibles, go to Luke chapter 15. And we're going to take a look at 3 stories that appear in Luke 15. Some of these may be very familiar to many of us. Some of them may be brand new. But this is one of the most profound chapters in Scripture. And this is like what I call the Luke 15 trifecta. There are 3 stories that Jesus tells back to back that all basically point us toward one thought, one lesson. Something that we need to know that has everything to do with this whole idea of redemption. So let me just start. I'm going to read just the first couple of verses in 15 to just give the setting. It says, now the tax collectors and sinners were all gathering around to hear Jesus. But the Pharisees and the teachers of the law muttered. Muttered is such a great biblical word. Man, they were complaining, they were gossiping, throw any word in there, that's what was going on. And they said this man welcomes sinners and eats with them. Oh my gosh. This man not only welcomes them, but eats with them. Like, he just can't do that. These are sinners, And this is how they thought about certain people in that day. There were people who were in, and there were people who were definitely out. And the religious leaders of that day knew exactly who was in, and they knew exactly who was out. And you're supposed to sort of play the game. Well, Jesus didn't. He didn't do that. And so Jesus overhears this conversation. He hears the muttering and the complaining, and he's like, all right, it's time for a story. Time for 3 stories, actually. That's what Jesus did. Whenever he heard that, he's like, we're going to bust out into a parable right now and get this fixed. So that's what he does. And he says, okay, let's first of all imagine there's a shepherd, and he's got 100 sheep. One sheep gets lost. What do you think's going to happen? Teachers of the law and Pharisees are like, oh, well, he would certainly never leave the 99 just to go get one sheep. It's just one sheep. No big deal. Jesus says he leaves the 99 and he goes to get the one sheep. 99 will be fine, but the one sheep is lost. And I love every single sheep. And so I'm going to go find that one. He finds the sheep, puts it on his shoulders, brings it back, is so excited that he's found his one sheep that he calls his friends and neighbors together, and they rejoice and have a big party. Second story, there's a woman, probably a widow, someone who was living on very little means. And she had 10 silver coins. One of those silver coins gets lost one day. Who knows what happens? Rolls off the table, disappears. She's frantic because that one coin represents one day's wage for her. So she begins to sweep the house, clean the house, pick up everything. She is desperately looking for this one coin. Finally, after all day, she finds the coin. And she's so excited, she calls her friends and neighbors over to celebrate, and that what was lost is now found. Now, at the end of each of these stories, Jesus says this, I tell you, it is the same in heaven. There is joy in heaven over one sinner who turns away from sin. And you see, Jesus is doing this, obviously, to explain to the Pharisees and the tax collectors this whole situation of Jesus hanging out. Did I say Pharisees and tax collectors? I meant to say Pharisees and teachers of the law. So anyway, don't get all confused now. Hang with me. So anyway, he explains why he would hang out with tax collectors and sinners, right? But that story really isn't enough. Jesus decides, I'm totally going to mess them up. I'm going to tell one more story, and this is going to get them right here. This is the one that's going to get a rise out of them. So he tells the story of the lost son. And you know, it's one of the most, we call it the prodigal son. It's one of the most widely known stories, not just among believers, but even among the unbelieving world. People have heard this idea of the prodigal son. And I think it's one of the most popular because if you read it, in so many ways you can insert yourself into that story. Whether it's the father or the son or the older brother, whoever it may be in the story, you might be able to see a part of yourself in it. And that's why it's so relatable for so many people. But what I want to do is, instead of focusing on the father or the older brother, I just want to look at the son, because I think that he's the one that represents this redemption story that we keep talking about, this process, and how God feels about us. The son in the story is second-born, by the way. How many second-borns do we have? Anyone? Bueller? Okay, we've got a few. I am one of them. So I looked up online, and so there's some qualities or characteristics that could be a part of a second-born. This may or may not apply to you, but maybe it does. They never have the parents' undivided attention. They always have a sibling ahead who's more advanced. They act as if they're in a race, trying to catch up or overtake the first child. And if the first child is good, it's quite possible the second child could be bad. All you bad second children. Anyway, they develop abilities the first child doesn't exhibit. If the first child is successful, they may feel uncertain of self and abilities. They may be a rebel. Bunch of rebels. Often doesn't like the position they're in. They may even push down other siblings. And eventually they become the boss of the family in getting their own way. Does this resonate with any second children in here? Or do you know one? Or maybe you have one in your house, So you might get that. And, that's a total stereotype, so it doesn't have to apply to everybody, but that's just kind of the way that goes. So that is this son. He has this older brother. And I get the picture that this son's just tired of living at home. He doesn't want to live under the shadow of his older brother, who's Mr. Perfect. He doesn't want to live with his dad's rules anymore. He's tired of that. He's just kind of sick of being at home, and so he decides, I got a better plan than staying in this place. So let me just kind of wrap up this story for you real quick. Basically, here's what happens. He goes to his dad. He says, Dad, I want my inheritance. And oddly enough, his dad gives it to him. He takes his inheritance. He goes off to a far country. He blows it all. Wakes up one day, realizes what he's done, decides to go back home, apologizes, and it's a big party at the end. That's okay. So there's the whole lost son, prodigal son story in a nutshell. But here's what we're going to do. I want to go through this story biblically, and I want to look at exactly what happens with this younger son to see how it might relate to us. So when you first go into verse 12, here's what it says about how this all began. It says, the younger one, or the younger son, said to his father, Father, give me my share of the estate. Now notice he didn't say, hey Dad, can we talk about the possibility of maybe you going ahead and giving me my inheritance, please? It was nothing like that. He boldly, arrogantly goes in and says, Dad, I want my share of the estate now, which would have been a huge slap in the face to his father. Because it was just like saying, Dad, I wish that you were dead. Because really, normally you wouldn't get this inheritance until the dad had passed away. So he's saying, I really don't care about you. Really what I care about is getting my share of the money so that I can just get out of here. And like I said earlier, it's even more amazing that the dad would actually give it to him. And already we begin to see sort of the heart of the father. But the son presents, first of all, these characteristics of pride and arrogance and selfishness. This is what he's coming with here. And, anytime that we place ourselves at the center of our life, that's when things begin to go wrong, right? I've watched lots of people live out of their pride and arrogance or ego, and it never seems to go well when you do that. When we sort of decide, you know what, I got this. I can do this on my own. You know, there are a lot of people who say they were self-made people. But you know what? There was a mom who gave you birth. There was somebody along the way who helped you get where you are. There was a God in heaven who decided that you should be here, who is your creator. So really, nobody did this on their own. But sometimes we feel like, man, I got this. You know, I'm smart enough and capable enough. Every time I think about this particular subject or issue, I think about this story of a bunch of guys who were at a construction site. And there was this young guy, kind of, big, strong kid, who was taunting all of his fellow workers on this particular day. And he was talking about how strong he was and how everybody else was just so weak. And he was looking at this older gentleman and giving him a hard time. And the old guy was sitting there. And finally, he just had enough of this kid. And he was like, he said, look, why don't you put your big mouth where your money is? He said, I'll bet you that I can carry something in this wheelbarrow over to that building right there that you can't carry back. And that young guy was like, bring it on, Grandpa, let's go. And so he goes and he gets the wheelbarrow and he brings it up to the young guy and he says, okay, get in. Young guy actually gets in, doesn't realize what he's doing. Old man wheels him over to the building, drops him there. Rest of the construction workers are busting out laughing. And it was only then that he realizes, I can't wheel myself back. This is a bad moment for me. And in so many ways, it's such a great illustration of like, you know what? Sometimes we need other people, don't we? God created us with a sense of community, a need for others along the journey. And in Proverbs 16:18, this is great wisdom here. It says, pride goes before destruction and a haughty spirit before a what? Fall. Is there anything good in that verse about pride or haughty spirit? Is there any good future for you if you hold on to those things? There's just not. And you know what, guys, I'm just going to pick on us. Can I pick on us for just a minute? We sit in the sweet spot of this particular issue right here with this whole issue of pride or ego. We're the last ones to say, I need help, or I'm lost, or I don't know what to do. And I've watched lots of guys hold on to their pride and lose their marriage because they weren't willing to get help. I've watched lots of guys hold on to their pride and financially become ruined because they weren't willing to reach out. Or maybe it was with an addiction. They didn't want anybody to know about it, so they didn't seek help, and it took them down. Or with stress at work. I mean, you name it. Anytime we decide, or either I got this or I don't want anybody else to know, that's usually a setup for disaster. And the first person is the one who really wants to help you, and that's God. He's the one who says, please, come to me. Come to me first. And we'll start this process of healing and hope and help. And that may require you to reach out to somebody else, by golly, and get some help. But we have to be careful of these issues like this son of this pride and arrogance, selfishness. All right, let's keep moving. Verse 13. It says, not long after that, after he received his inheritance, the younger son got together all that he had. Yeah, I'm laughing at that because this is probably like a middle to older teenage kid. So like all he had, like he took his Bon Jovi poster off the wall, and he went over and got his phone and his cool shorts, and he had his big wad of cash from his dad stuck in his back pocket. He's like, get my old bike here, got that. And he sets off for this distant country, and it says, and there squandered his wealth in wild living. In that statement, you can just imagine so many things that was going on with this kid. He went off to Las Vegas, Palestine, whatever that was in the day, with his big wad of cash, figured that would last forever. He thought, this is going to give me the new life I've always wanted. But the reality is that he got out there, and that was not the life that he'd always wanted. And what we know about this son from here are the characteristics of undisciplined and reckless and uncaring. Undisciplined and reckless and uncaring. And I was reading a blog post that was just kind of focused on this Luke 15, and the guy said, the son ran away from his dad to a self-centered life, thinking this was going to fill his life with something good, but he didn't care about his dad or his life or his potential. His heart was turned away from everything he knew was good and right. He, like many who leave home, was looking for something he thought was not at home. Looking for something out here that he thought, I'm not getting it here. And he was searching. And I know there are a lot of people, maybe even somebody here today, who's just like, man, I'm just searching. I know that God is over here, but I'm just constantly on this search for something else. And it's like the Bono U2 song, Still Haven't Found What I'm Looking For. You know this one? So the lyrics kind of go like this: I believe in the kingdom come, then all the colors will bleed into one. But yes, I'm still running. You broke the bonds and you loosed the chains. You carried the cross and my shame. You know I believe it, but I still haven't found what I'm looking for. I still haven't found what I'm looking for. And you know what? God gets the search. I really think he does. I mean, nobody would think that, it's like he understands it. For some people, it just takes a little longer to get to that point, but he's like, you know what? We can't do that forever. There is an end to that. There is a point at which we do have to stop and relent, because it's likely that we're going to have questions until we get to heaven, right? That's why they call it faith. Faith in God and trust in him to take care of that, and we have to be careful what we tie our heart to in this process. And Paul says in Romans 1:25, he says, they exchanged the truth of God for a lie, and they worshipped and served created things rather than the Creator. And it's a reminder that we have to be careful not to exchange the truth of God, which is how much he loves us and this plan that he has for us and a way to get there, so that we can have everything this world has to offer, thinking, oh wait, this is the truth, this is what's going to make me happy, and this is what's going to make me fulfilled. And what we discover is it's like being thirsty and drinking seawater. It just makes us thirstier. It doesn't help. We don't want to exchange the truth for the lie of this world. So when he gets out there, he blows all of his cash. Eventually he realizes, I have no money, therefore I'm not going to be able to eat. So he has to get a job, and he does so with a farmer. But the only job that was available was feeding the pigs. A real glorious job for this young kid setting out on his own kind of thing. And at some point, while he was starving and feeding these pigs, I can just imagine as he was beginning to actually look at the food the pigs were eating, he sort of desired what they were eating because he was so hungry, and he picked up a corn cob or whatever it was and actually thought about eating that, when all of a sudden it says in verse 17, it says, when he came to his senses, or in the English Standard Version it says, when he came to himself. It's like this moment, probably the very bottom, where he realized, I'm about to eat what the pigs are eating. What is going on here? And maybe he threw it down, and he began to think about the life he'd left. And he began to think about his home and everything that he had and how he was taken care of. And he thought about maybe even his older brother, and then he missed him. And then he started thinking about his dad, how much he cared about him, and how much he missed him. And he came to his senses. Have you ever done that? Have you ever had a moment where it was just like life just slapped you in the face, or some experience happened? You just kind of woke up. I remember when I was in high school, I was ninth grade playing football. Ninth graders in varsity football are called tackling dummies. That's what we were. They just stuck us on defense and said, hold this in front of you so that these guys can pretty much mow you down. And so I was playing defensive back one day in practice, and that was my job, sitting over here holding my dummy. And so they ran a play to my side. The guard pulled. He was twice my size. He was coming at like 95 miles an hour. And I was sitting there thinking, do you stand still or move? And about that time, bam! The dummy went that way and the other dummy went this way, and it was just like, it was an ugly scene. I hit the ground and passed out for just a minute. And I can remember Coach is standing over me, and I started to wake up, and I saw stars. That is true. Seeing stars is for real. Like the little, and I was like, oh my gosh, what are we doing here? And then, coaches drove me, hey, doing the thing like the Jerry Maguire, Rod Tidwell, come on, Rod, come on, wake up. And so I'm laying there. Finally, I start coming to my senses. Then the trainer comes out with the smelling salts. Have you ever had that done to you? That's a kind of, it's terrible. So anyway, she's doing that, like sticking it up in my nose. I woke up. They brought me up, took me over the bench. I was clear. I was wide awake. I'm good to go now. But It's that moment of coming to your senses. It's where you wake up and you realize the reality that you're in, and you're like, I'm back. That's what was happening to him. He got in this bad place, and finally it was like, what am I doing? Or what have I done? And the first step to getting found is to admit you're lost. Isn't that true? And like I said, guys, we're the first ones to deny. I am not lost. I can do this. But at some point we have to say, no, wait a minute, it's true. The reality of my situation is I don't know where I am or what I'm doing. And this kid, I think that when he woke up, he realized this is not me. This is not who I am. This is not how I was raised. This is not the life I'm supposed to be living. This is not it. And that was a big part of his waking up and his recognizing where he was. And, for us, sometimes that's just a good long look in the mirror and a little self-assessment, and where we go, you know what, I got a little bit too much around the middle. I can lose a little bit on top. I got bags on my eyes. I got to do something. I have to change. And spiritually, it's the same thing, where we look at ourselves and we go, well, you know what, this isn't working out. God, I need your help. I need your help because I can't do this on my own. And so, verse 18, the son says to himself, I will set out and I will go back to my father, and I will say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired men. So he got up and he went to his father. And here we see these characteristics of repentant, sorry, humble. And the first steps toward found usually start with repentant, sorry, and humble. First steps toward a lot of good things that we need to rebuild begin with those three things. And in his mind, he starts thinking, well, the only place I can go that's going to do me any good is home. And so he has to kind of formulate a plan. He's like, well, when I go back, my dad is not going to accept me. Let's just go ahead and get that out of the way. But maybe I can convince him just to let me be a servant. I don't need to be a son anymore. If he'll just let me be a servant, that would be all I'm asking for. So in his mind, he has this plan of how he's going to go back. And I think that he had realized, I'm at the bottom here. I'm done with pride or any of that other good stuff knowing what I'm doing. And he realized that two words were going to hopefully help this. And these are some of the words that are hardest for us to get out. I'm sorry. Have you ever choked on those words? Or how about the response, I forgive you? How important are those words, married couples? How important are those words for any relationship that's been difficult? Well, in many ways, it can be the same with God, where we have to humble ourselves before Him and say, you know what, I'm sorry. And I need help. And he was feeling very low and very unworthy in this moment, but he was looking in the right direction. And there's a lady, her name is Henrietta Mears, and she founded a curriculum called Gospel Light that we used to use with our kids several years ago. But she said, God never put anyone in a place too small to grow. I love that. God never put anybody in a place too small to grow. This young man was in that small place, but he had this opportunity out of that to grow and to become something new. And so he decided to return home with humility and basically just hope for the best. And so he sets out for home and gets a long way off, it says in the scripture, and thinking that he was going to have to go up to the front door, ask the servant if he could come in, see if the servant would let him go see his dad, go find his dad would kick him out, and that'd be the end of it. And that's not even close what happens. His dad is on the front porch, and he's been there ever since the son left. And he's waiting because he misses his son. And he's looking way out. And all of a sudden he sees somebody coming. And you can just imagine, he's like, oh, wait, somebody's coming. Do you see that? Wait, who is that? And then he realizes, it's my son. And he does this really socially awkward and unmanly thing, and he picks up his man dress and he jumps off the front porch, although I'm not sure that he did that, but I kind of feel like he jumped. And everybody else went, what is he doing? This is so socially awkward and unacceptable, but he doesn't care. he sprints to his son. And he goes up to him, and the son starts first of all, he hugs him and he kisses him. And the son kind of probably pushes him back, and he's like, got this speech in his mind. So he's like, Dad, here's the deal I need to tell you. And he's like, no. Just stop right there. And here's what it says in Scripture, verse 22. But the father said to his servants, quick, bring the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Bring the fatted calf and kill it. Let's have a feast and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. And so they began to celebrate. And you know those Pharisees and teachers of the law, they would have said, that's the most ridiculous story I've ever heard in my life. That dad should have kicked him out, should have kicked him off the farm and sent him away and kicked him out of the family. He had every right to do that. So this story doesn't make any sense. And Jesus said, you see, the father you talk about is the father that you just described who would have done those things. That's how you think about God. That there are those who are in and those who are out. But Jesus was saying, see, the father I'm talking about is the one in my story. He's the good, good father. That when we come back to him, no matter where we've been, he sprints to come to us. And with arms wide open, he's waiting for us to come home. Because he loves his children. He wants them to be with him. He knows he has the best life waiting for them. And it's not out there. It's at home. You know, this story reminds me that anybody can change. It doesn't matter who you are, where you've been, what you've done, whether you're 16 or 36 or 86. As long as we have breath and we're here, we can change. And we can come to our good Father and we can tell him things like, I'm sorry, admit where we've been. And the first thing that he does is he wraps us up. And he offers us forgiveness and grace and mercy that we don't even understand. I think about the words of Alfred Nobel of the Nobel Prize when he said, every man ought to have the chance to correct his epitaph in midstream and write a new one. And it's good that we can. Let's pray. Well, Father, this morning as we hear this story, we're reminded that there could have been a lot of other stories that Jesus could have told about you and about us. There could have been a story that looked a whole lot more like what the Pharisees would have dreamed up, but it wasn't. You are that Father who, when we have gone our own way, when we've been rebellious, when we have not loved you, when we have rejected you, or whatever we have done, when we come back, you are waiting for us with open arms. And so, God, for anybody who's here this morning who maybe right now they're in a distant country, maybe this morning they're coming to their senses, realizing that this is not the life they were looking for. God, I pray that they would just give all that to you. Offer that to you in prayer. Start with just the admission. I'm lost. I don't know where I am right now. But I need help. God, I know that you are ready as soon as they offer that prayer to lavish your grace and your mercy on them and help them start something new, a new journey with new hope. God, for anybody who grew up knowing the truth and then left and wandered, maybe you're in that place right now. God, I pray that they would just do the same. Just say, God, I am far from you. But it's not where I want to be. Help them to get back to that place Lord, every single one of us here know that we can't do this life on our own, that we're here only at your good pleasure. You are the one who breathed life into our lungs and who sustains us every day. And we can't live without you. So I pray that we would find that spirit of humility, that we would reject pride and arrogance and selfishness, and that we would submit to you and to your will and to your way in this life and understand that it's only there that we find the life that we really want to live and the only life that will matter in the end. And so God, give us strength to do that. We love you. We thank you for the rich ways that you love us, the amazing grace that we just don't understand that you give to us. We are grateful. It's why we come here every week, Lord, to say thank you for it and to be challenged to live that out. So God, today